Plan Commission to order. We do have quorum. The first item on our agenda is to hear from our technical facilitator, Jesse Poole. Jesse?
All right, welcome to our virtual Plan Commission meeting. We're going to cover a few basic items before beginning. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking on the link or calling the number in your original email. To members and city staff members, if you are able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you are able, please activate your video when you are speaking. The chair, clerk, and technical facilitator are responsible for muting and unmuting committee members. Use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak, ask questions, or request a roll call vote. During any roll call, all panelists will be unmuted briefly. Staff, click raise hand when you are asked a question. The chair will do their best to call on the committee and members in the order in which their hands are raised. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. The clerk will tell you when your time is up. After speaking, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the board, please send it in the email listed in today's agenda. Chair, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jesse. The next item on our agenda is agenda item 1, public comment. I do not see that there's any public comment. Is that correct, Heather? Yes. Okay. Then we have communications, disclosures, and recusals. Members of the body should make any required disclosures or recusals under the city's ethics code. Do we have any? Commissioner Solheim.
Just a disclosure for item 4 on Crosswinds Lane. I previously worked for Gorman and Company, who is not the applicant, but seems to be mentioned related to this. I never worked on the project or had knowledge of it, so it would not affect my decision.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, I see no more raised hands. I do have a communication. So we are unfortunately going to be losing Sydney Prusak as one of our planners. We have really benefited by her skill and knowledge and ability to work with all kinds of people. So thank you very much, Sydney. She will be going on a grand adventure. So I wish Sydney very well and hope that it is everything that she hopes it will be. Heather, did you want to add anything?
Just very briefly, I think I'd like to add, and Kevin too, how much we appreciate Sydney. She's been with the planning division for almost 4 years now and has just been making steady and solid contributions her entire time, taking on cases with increasing complexity and doing a fantastic job, always thorough, always objective, providing you as decision makers with strong analysis. And we're also just going to really miss her around the office, virtual or in person. And I'll turn it over to Kevin, who's had an opportunity to work really closely with Sydney.
Thanks, Heather. Yeah, I just wanted to take a quick moment and echo those same comments. Sydney's been an instrumental part of all we do here, and the Plan Commission sees her, regularly at meetings. And in fact, she's been with you in some of your later meetings, especially over the last year, where you've had some ones that have gone late into the evening. But she does so much behind the scenes, and as you can probably imagine, there's so much work that goes into just preparing for any Plan Commission meeting. The ones that go into the late hours and even the shorter ones. There's a lot of work that happens behind the scene, and she's just been instrumental in all parts of that work. She's dedicated and a conscientious project manager, and she just has a great eye for detail, which really helps her in this position. But she's just also a very skilled planner with great insights and just someone that we love collaborating with and love bouncing ideas off of. And as Heather said, she will be missed, but we wanted to thank Sydney for all of her efforts so far and wish her all the best going forward.
I actually hope we might see you back here, Sydney. So thank you very much. The next item on our agenda, minutes of the May 10th regular meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Alder Alboris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I didn't have anything regarding the minutes. I just literally wanted to take about 30 seconds to acknowledge Sydney, if that's okay with you.
Thank you. Yes, please do.
Yeah, and I apologize to my other commissioners. I know that we don't want to stay here longer than needed, but Sydney was very helpful and instrumental in a District 20 matter where there was a number of residents who were impacted by, let's just say, a local organization that had some sort of like off run and sort of like that was causing flooding. And so it was a very sensitive topic. And one of the folks actually in that space that was a vocal advocate was a former neighborhood association president. And, you know, again, I try and treat every constituent, you know, equally and objectively, but, you know, this person definitely had like a voice that was being heard. And so it was a very difficult situation to kind of navigate. And Sydney just came in and helped facilitate the meeting and did an excellent job, helped every side of the voice be heard. And really, it was just information sharing that folks needed. And she really just helped do that. And so I just want to say thanks for that. You kind of helped me get out of a sticky situation with that. And so I don't know what your next chapter entails, but I'm sure that you'll be contributing much in that space and just sort of wishing you the best in the next chapter. So thank you, Madam Chair, for letting me say that.
Sydney.
Yeah, now I feel like I can't leave you all hanging. So I'm leaving. I'm going to hike the Pacific Crest Trail. So I'm going to walk from Canada to Mexico. So it's going to take me between 4 and 5 months. So I'm stepping away from this position now. I started the hike in July, but I needed some time to get my life together and start walking more instead of sitting on Zoom for most of the day. But I just want to say that all of you like have been such an inspiration. I know that maybe I'm cocky, but I know I will be a plan commissioner someday. And I really thank all of you for that inspiration because you all have so much influence over the city, and just learning how local government works at this level has just been so informative. I mean, this was my first job out of grad school, and I feel like how far I've come in the past 4 years is amazing. And we've definitely had some memories together. So we all can think of a time, and I still think of all the times that we've had in person and virtual. So again, thank you all so much. And yeah, Heather and Kevin, thank you. But I'll get to those thank yous further on. But yeah, all of you commissioners, I just want to say thank you.
Thank you very much, Sydney. Okay, back to the minutes then. We do have the minutes of May 10th. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Seeing no raised hands, is there a motion? Moved by Commissioner Cantrell. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Solheim. We do have a motion. We will come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously. Next is the schedule of meetings. We have a regular meeting on June 7th and 21st, and then on July 12th and 26th. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda, which does include referrals and routine business. So under new business, for the consent agenda, we do have a couple of referrals. Agenda item 2, agenda item 3, and then agenda item 7 for the consent agenda, and agenda item 9, 10, 11, and 12 for the consent agenda. So these items are placed onto a consent agenda and they're addressed at the beginning of our meeting. And then people interested in those items can disconnect unless a member of the commission requests separation, in which case that item is removed from the consent agenda and taken in the regular course of business. All of the items on the consent agenda are ones that staff believes that an application has sufficient review to warrant approval with the conditions placed upon it by the various city committees, and the applicant accepts those conditions, and there are no individuals registered to speak in opposition to the item. Are there any items on the consent agenda that commissioners would like to request for separation? Seeing no raised hands, then I will go through those items more thoroughly that are on the consent agenda. The first one is for referral, agenda item 2, Legistar 65260, to be referred to the June 21st, 2021 Plan Commission meeting pending a recommendation on the proposed amendment by the Transportation Policy and Planning Board. And then agenda item 3, also for referral, Legistar 63216, to be referred to June 21st, pending revisions to the zoning code by the Common Council. Then for the consent agenda, agenda item 7, Legistar 64748, located at 7418 South Stoughton Road, 15th Alder District, consideration of a conditional use in the commercial corridor transitional district for an auto repair station to allow an existing building to be converted into an auto repair and auto sales facility. Agenda item 9, Legistar 64900, located at 1330 Sherman Avenue, 2nd Alder District, consideration of a conditional use for lakefront development to allow reconstruction of the shelter building at Tenny Beach. Agenda item 10, Legistar 64901, located at 2742 Doll Street, 12th Alder District, consideration of a conditional use in the traditional residential consistent 4 district for an accessory building exceeding 576 square feet in consideration of a conditional use for an accessory building exceeding 10% of lot area to allow construction of a detached garage. Agenda item 11, Legistar 64902, located at 921 East Mifflin Street, 12th Alder District, consideration of a conditional use in the traditional residential consistent 4 district for an accessory dwelling unit to allow an existing accessory building to be converted into an accessory dwelling unit. And agenda item 12, Legistar 64903, located at 6501 Watts Road, Urban Design District 2, 9th Alder District, consideration of a conditional use in the Suburban Employment District for a school to allow a portion of an office building to be converted into a private school. Is there, so I will open the public hearing on all of those, close the public hearing. Is there a motion? Commissioner Cantrell.
I'll recommend that the consent agenda items be approved and that the items of referral be referred to the dates as communicated.
Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Solheim. We will come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the consent agenda passes unanimously. Now on to the next items on our agenda. The first item to be heard is agenda item 4, Legistar 64349, creating section 28.022 through 00492 of the Madison General Ordinances to amend a planned development district at property located at 9301 Crosswinds Lane, First Alder District, amending the general development plan and creating section 28.022 through 00493 to approve a specific implementation plan. We do have a presentation by staff. Tim Parks will be giving that presentation. Tim.
Thank you, Chair and members of the Plan Commission. Briefly, this is a request by Conrad Gorman of Perch Properties to amend the Plan Development, General Development Plan, and specific implementation plan for the Crosswinds at Hawks Landing condominium development. It's an undeveloped 1.25 acre parcel located in the southwestern corner of a larger 16.5 acre development that itself is located on the north side of Midtown Road, west of Hawks Landing Circle, on the southern edge of the larger Hawks Landing Golf Club development on the far west side. The subject site is located on the western end of Crosswinds Lane, a private road that extends into the development from Hawks Landing Circle and serves the southern half of the condominium community. This request was last before you at your March 22nd meeting and was referred by the Plan Commission to allow the applicant to meet with the surrounding condominium community. Community meeting was organized by Alder Barbara Harrington McKinney of the 1st District on May 13th, where the project was discussed. Staff will note in materials for this item that the applicant has provided a revised site plan that moves the eastern of the two buildings a little bit further west to provide more space between it and existing building 3, or what would be the westernmost existing 4-story 16-unit building. Is noted in the March 22nd staff report. The project was originally approved in 2001 to include 5 4-story 16-unit buildings. However, only 3 of those have been built to date. And this proposal seeks to renew the zoning approvals to allow the final 2 buildings originally shown along the Midtown Road frontage of the Crosswinds development to be built. Other changes on the revised site plan dated May 20th and attached to the legislative file for the PD amendment is a slight shift in the location of proposed building 5, which would be the westernmost of the 2 proposed buildings, to create a little more space between it and a 2-unit building directly to the north on the north side of Crosswinds Lane. Also, a dog run that was shown on the original submittal between buildings 4 and 5 has been removed. The matter again is before the Plan Commission because the Plan Development Zoning District criteria in section 28.098 of the zoning code establishes a 10-year limit on plan development zoning approvals. Any part of a plan development zoning district that's not built within 10 years of the approval of a general development plan or any changes to the phasing of a plan development district require that the plan development district effectively be reapproved to allow the project to go forward and for consideration to be given to any changes in the environment that might somehow render the approved plan development district moot and discourage it going forward. Planning staff believes that the Plan Commission may recommend approval of the amended plan development zoning, that the standards and criteria for approval are met. Staff feels that overall, the proposal to build the 2 4-story 16-unit buildings in the southwestern corner of the Crosswinds development are consistent with the conditions that were present when the project was originally approved in October of 2000 and recorded in early 2001. The development is consistent with both the 2018 comprehensive plan and the recommendations of the Midtown Neighborhood Development Plan since the first adoption of that plan in 1999. And we believe that it can meet the conditions or meet the standards subject to the conditions noted on page 5 of the March 22nd staff report. And I'd be happy to answer any questions after the hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. I will open the public hearing. We do have a couple of registrants. The first we will hear from is Conrad Gorman, Shaw Court, Madison, in support, wishing to speak, representing Gorman and Company from Oregon, Wisconsin. Conrad Gorman, you will have 3 minutes.
Hello, thank you very much for your time. Like Tim said, we're revisiting this from a March meeting that was referred. We've had several meetings with the Condo Association board members, Tim Parks, as well as Alder Harrington McKinney, that we've really received some great feedback and have, I think, made some improvements to the plan, both interior and exterior, based on a lot of that feedback. We still are working on some things, and there's a few things specifically that I'd like to address based on the meetings that we've had over the last few weeks. One is a merger of the condo association between the existing members and owners and the new prospective owners. My understanding is a meeting will have to be called and a vote of all members, and in order to have that merger, we still are going to have to work out some of the bylaws and some details, such as who is going to pay for some different costs of maintaining the grounds during construction and before people move in. But in my opinion, those are definitely details that can be worked out between the association and their attorney, and I don't foresee it being a big hurdle. They've been very good communicating with and working with, and I don't foresee that being a huge hurdle. Another issue that we've talked about is Crosswinds Lane, which, as Tim said, we are looking to move it south a little bit to give some space between it and Building 30. I know that the association had wanted to look into widening it, adding curbs and gutters, and expansion, maybe even a cul-de-sac in that area. I completely understand where they're coming from, but after spending quite a bit of time studying the traffic patterns and stuff in that location, I really do feel that the amount of traffic is going to be consistent with the other streets in the neighborhood that are similar. During a Friday afternoon, I only witnessed about 1.16 cars per hour per doorway coming. So there's those 4 doors that are going to be added. I understand, people that live there and have no traffic, even a small increase in traffic is a big increase to them. And I understand that, but I do just feel that it is consistent with the other streets in the neighborhood and consistent with the use that was approved in 2001. I know a lot of things have changed, but if anything, with people working from home more and improved mass transit, the amount of car traffic.
Thank you, Conrad. That does conclude your available time. The next registrant is Richard Ziehr, Crosswinds Lane, opposed and wishing to speak. Richard, you have 3 minutes. Has Richard been unmuted from our side?
Unmute. How's that? Is it working this time?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me just make my comments brief this evening. I spoke at the earlier planning meeting and also my wife and I provided a number of comments at the neighborhood meeting. The one thing that is interesting pertaining to our perspective in building number 30 is we're talking about a safety factor. To date, we haven't seen anything from Mr. Gorman pertaining to the slight shift that he referred to. I don't know what he's referring to as far as the road is concerned and how he's going to provide better access into building number 5. There should be on file today in front of you some documentation that we provided yesterday. And then earlier today, I provided a map, which was a suggestion as far as it's referred to as map number D, as a suggestion as to what could happen as far as the shift of that road going into building number 5. If you recall, our condominium ends, or Crosswinds Lane ends right next to our condominium. We don't have a luxury of any space next to our building. And we're suggesting 27 feet between the building, our building, and the road going into building number 5. And one might ask, well, how did I come up with 27 feet? Well, there is a fire hydrant that's exactly 27 feet from our building. And what I'm suggesting is that the Planning Commission approve a road or a driveway that goes into building number 5 on the south side of that fire hydrant. And then what that would do is provide us a safety zone, because big garbage trucks go into these buildings, front-loaded garbage trucks go right down to these buildings, and that's right next to our building. And when they come out, their option is try to find a place to turn around or back out of Crosswinds Lane. And I'm just trying to get a green space, a safety zone for our family, so that vehicles do not use our driveway as a turnaround on Crosswinds Lane. So I'm imploring the Planning Commission not to approve this project at this time until Mr. Gorman comes out here. I heard he was out here. I have not seen him. And at least stake out and show us where these roads are going to be, or where this driveway is going to be going into building number 5, so we can at least iron this out before anything is approved. So I thank you very much for the time this evening. And if you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you, Richard. The next registrant is Justin Marshall, Sensor Drive, Evansville, Wisconsin, in support, not wishing to speak, but available to answer questions. Are there questions of any of our registrants? Alder McKinney.
Thank you very much. My question is to Conrad.
Yes.
Thank you, Conrad. First of all, I want to acknowledge the fact that you have really been showing up and being responsive to the questions that I had. During the public meeting, and also with the correspondence back and emails back and forth, the question, and I was out there on Sunday, so I absolutely know about that turnaround. The speaker was concerned about that turnaround space, and you were going to be working with your engineer to do some adjusting. Could you speak to that?
Well, the civil engineer did move in the revised site plan that Tim had, and I sent to Steve Anderson last week with the condo association. It did not move the driveway 27 feet, but it did shift it to the south to create more space and a green safety space away from Mr. Ziehr's building, away from building 30. And then in addition, also the space in between buildings 3 and 4. So we are looking to address his concerns and try to create a safety barrier for his property as well. As far as the turnaround, I wish that there was room to physically add a cul-de-sac or some kind of turnaround there going into Building 5, but I think that the turnaround is going to have to be the fire access lane just due to the space there. And that was consistent with what was planned and approved of previously as well. So, I'm definitely, acknowledge and completely understand his concerns. And really, we are trying to do what we can to find something that physically will work in the space, will work for the new owners of those homes, as well as try to work with him to protect his property and his safety and his concerns as well.
Okay, my follow-up question is that one of the speakers said that it would have been helpful to know where the markers is, and so I'm not really sure what that looks like. But how engaged have you been with responding to the questions and concerns that have come up with the residents?
I'm attempting to be as engaged as I can. Like a lot of us, 2 little children at home and full-time job, and then doing this as well. So, but I'm really trying to, we've gone out on site and met with Mr. Ziehr and several other members. We had the Zoom meeting. I've been working with the civil engineers to try to, and architects to try to improve and work with their suggestions and concerns as much as we can. We would love to continue to do that all throughout the process. I would be happy to go out with some other members of our team and do some staking out and try to make that easier to visualize. I would be more than happy to do some of those things. And just continue to work with them all throughout the process. We really want to throw as few curveballs as we possibly can, and that's part of the reason that we are trying to stay so close to what was originally approved, so that the neighbors. We're trying not to have something totally unexpected come towards them. We're trying to stick towards the vision of what was there, so that there aren't too many unforeseen curveballs, I guess is the best way I would put it. So
thank you, Conrad. Did you have any further follow-up questions, Alder?
No, I will speak to when it's a discussion.
Okay, thank you for joining us. Okay, Commissioner Cantrell.
In our staff information, they submitted some diagrams or some site plans of, I think, the change that Mr. Gorman's talking about. I think my question is, it may be appropriate to show that that site plan and have Mr. Gorman speak to the number of feet that the driveway is moving away from building number 30. I think that would maybe clarify some information for the speaker who spoke in opposition of this, and also for me and other Plan Commission members. So I don't know if that's more of a staff question or...
Well, I think Jim can show it, and then maybe Conrad can speak to it.
Okay.
Conrad?
Thanks.
I'm sorry, I don't know offhand exactly how many feet that has shifted. Justin, would you maybe have that information, or have... Justin is one of the architects on the project.
Yes, and Justin is registered as available to answer questions. So if we could unmute Justin, please. And he is representing the developer on the project.
you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I have a PDF from our civil engineer, so I do not know the exact dimension. We have not received the CAD plan yet, but if I were to look at it based upon the driveways being 18 feet wide, and then if we look at the corner of building 30 based on the dotted line just to the south of that, which represents the north edge of Crosswinds Lane, I would assume that drive is somewhere around 10 to 12 feet from the corner of building 30. And I believe if you currently look at like Google Maps, that the end of the road is literally like at the corner of their building. So we're probably moving it south. I would assume around 10 to 12 feet based on the graphics, but like I said, I don't have an exact dimension.
Do you have any follow-ups, Commissioner Cantrell?
So what you're saying is the driveway pretty much is at the corner of the building number 30. And you're actually moving the driveway farther away from their building, maybe up to 12 feet. Is that what?
Correct. Yeah. Right now, the Crosswinds Lane itself, I would assume looking at it, it looks like it's about 2 feet from the corner of their building, and we're going south probably 10 feet with it, would be my assumption.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. I might have some other questions for staff, but that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Alder Heck.
Thank you, Chair. This is for Conrad Gorman also. Some of this may not even be in Plan Commission's purview, but it's a little bit fuzzy. You mentioned that you've been meeting with the condo association board as you discuss the mergers of the condominium associations and other related matters, and that discussions were going well in your estimation. Yet I read in public comment that someone who's on the board as of 2 days ago felt like they hadn't been contacted. So can you just describe who you've been talking to about all these issues again?
So this is for, Conrad Gorman, please.
Yeah, so we had a open Zoom meeting on the 13th with any neighbors that wanted to attend. We, I think, had a lot of discussions there previously to that, but since the March meeting, I went out on site and met with Steve Anderson, Darko, who is the president of the condo association, and 2 or 3 other members, and we toured the area. We really got some good feedback there. And then most of my email correspondence has been with Steve Anderson of the condo association. He had a 4-page PDF with a lot of suggestions and concerns. And then I think we responded with a similar length, how we were planning and working towards addressing those issues. And then he and I have exchanged some emails. I have been out of town so the last couple of days. I apologize, but I probably haven't been as quick to respond as I would like to with some issues. But I really have gained a lot from discussing things with all of them, and really hope to continue to do that throughout the process.
Thanks. That kind of tells me that you've since the previous Plan Commission meeting that there's been and given the pandemic that you've made a good faith effort to communicate as you can. That was my only question. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Any other questions of any of our registrants? Seeing no raised hands, I will close the public hearing. Questions of staff? Are there any questions for staff? Commissioner Cantrell.
I guess this is for Tim. I'm assuming that what they're proposing is pretty much mirrors what was approved 10 years ago. And also it appears just on the Google map that the drawing that was shown that maybe 10 years ago they had the driveway adjoining building 30, closer to building 30 than what the plan showed. So it looks like they're moving the driveway more consistent with where it was originally proposed. That's how I guess I view this now. Is that correct, Tim?
Yes, generally speaking. I mean, we're talking about a very modest amount of deviation between the project as it was approved actually 20 years ago, just over 20 years ago, and now. And I'm just looking for a good image that I can put up on the screen to kind of show you a comparison. Let's see. So here, this is how this corner of the Crosswinds development was approved in October 2000, the recorded PUD SIP from 2001, showing Building 30 placed in very, very close proximity to Crosswinds Lane, with the access points to Buildings 4 and 5 on the opposite side of the road. The site plan that was, hopefully you're seeing now, the revised site plan that was offered last week, showing those same access points, showing the proximity of Building 30 to the north side of Crosswinds Lane. The fire hydrant that Mr. Ziehr mentioned in his comments is kind of at the end of existing Crosswinds. And just not to confuse things, but this is the site plan as it was originally submitted in January and was before you in March, with the dog run that is no more, the change in spacing between buildings 4 and 5. And I would describe a modest change to the location of the access to building 5. Admittedly, the addendum references Mr. Gorman's transmittal of the revised site plan, noting the western driveway to building 5 being changed. I would submit it has been changed compared to the originally submitted plans, but I would also say that that's modestly the case. But really, we're talking about a game of inches here, because Building 30 is where it was approved in that 2001 planned unit development, and buildings 4 and 5 will be located very similarly to how they were shown in that same document. And so that it kind of buoys staff's contention that the project is very similar to the one that was approved 20 years ago. Certainly, nothing that we saw suggested that it wouldn't warrant reapproval. But the purpose of that 10-year rule in the Plan Development District is to provide opportunities for plan developments not effectively to live on forever, and for changes in the built environment to be considered before they're reapproved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any further questions?
No.
No. Thank you. Any other questions of staff? Any further questions of staff? Seeing none, I would be looking for a motion. Commissioner Cantrell.
I'm going to recommend that the Plan Commission forward the zoning map amendment to the City Council with approval, approving the amended general development plan and specific implementation plan to allow the construction of the two 16-unit multiple family buildings on land generally addressed at 9301 Crosswinds Lane, subject to the conditions of urban design on their March 10th, 2021 meeting, and the conditions of the review agencies and the staff report on page 5 of the March 22nd, 2021 meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there a second? Seconded by Alder Heck. Commissioner Cantrell, did you wish to speak to your motion?
Yes, I think the developer in this case has made a good faith effort trying to meet with the condo association, which that's what we wanted him to do, and make adjustments as necessary. And I think that the plan that he's proposing is more consistent with what was. It's actually better than what was originally approved, at least from the schematics that staff showed us. So I think that in this case, I think that that's why I'm recommending it be approved.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing no raised hands, we'll come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously. The next item on our agenda is our agenda item 5 and 6, which we are considering together. Agenda item 5, Legistar 64584, located at 145 through 151 West Wilson Street and 309 through 321 South Henry Street. 4th Alder District, consideration of a demolition permit to demolish 7 residential buildings. Consideration of a conditional use in the urban mixed use district for a new building greater than 20,000 square feet and more than 4 stories. In consideration of a conditional use in the UMX district for outdoor recreation to allow construction of a 10-story mixed use building containing approximately 800 square feet of commercial space and 206 apartments. We have a presentation by Sydney Prusak on this proposal. Sydney, okay, go ahead, Sydney.
Thank you, Chair and members of the Plan Commission. The applicant requests approval of 7 demolition permits and 2 conditional uses, which were just enumerated by the Chair. These approvals will allow the construction of a 10-story mixed-use building with underground parking and an outdoor pool. The applicant also requests approval of a certified survey map to combine 8 parcels into 1 developable lot. The Planning Division believes that the demolition and conditional use approval standards can be found met with this proposal. The comprehensive plan recommends downtown core for the subject site, which covers the most intensely developed part of the city. The downtown plan includes the entire site in an area with a recommended building height of up to 10 stories, and it calls out the majority of the site as a potential redevelopment or infill site. I will note that the property located at 151 West Wilson was called out as a potential landmark in both the 1998 and 2012 downtown plans. But when doing the review of all of the structures proposed for demolition, the city's Landmarks Commission found that while the building has historic value related to the vernacular context of Madison's built environment, the building itself is not historically, architecturally, or culturally significant. This proposal also went before the city's Urban Design Commission for review, as the UDC is an advisory body for all new development projects in the urban mixed-use zoning district. At their May 12th meeting, the UDC recommended that the Planning Commission approve this request with 1 condition of approval regarding the site's landscaping plan. And as you may know from personal experience driving downtown South Henry Street does not, in fact, connect to John Nolan Drive. And therefore, based on feedback from the neighborhood and the fact that this development will be the only property with access off of South Henry Street, the Traffic Engineering Division recommended a condition of approval to realign the leg of South Henry Street slightly towards the west. This slight realignment will be designed to deter non-residents from utilizing South Henry Street to attempt to access John Nolan Drive. The applicant also submitted a traffic impact analysis, which was reviewed by the Traffic Engineering Division. And as part of final sign-off, the applicant shall prepare a traffic demand management plan to be reviewed and approved by the city's traffic engineer. Staff Sean Malloy and Mark Winter from the traffic engineering are here tonight to answer any traffic or street realignment related question. In regards to public input, staff notes that a neighborhood steering committee was formed to review and guide this project. While staff did not receive comments specifically for the Plan Commission, the steering committee did provide a report for the Urban Design Commission, which is included in the Plan Commission materials. So given all this, the Planning Division recommends that the Plan Commission find that the demolition and conditional use standards are met and approve the demolition and conditional use request to demolish 7 residential structures and construct a 10-story mixed-use building with 809 square feet of commercial space, 206 residential units, 229 underground and covered vehicle parking stalls, and an outdoor pool at 145 through 151 West Wilson and 309 through 321 South Henry Street. The Planning Division also recommends that the Plan Commission approve the certified survey map and forward the necessary resolutions approving it and accepting the dedications to the Common Council with the recommendation for approval. And that's all I have right now, and I'll be able to answer questions after the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Sydney. I will open the public hearing. The first registrant we will hear from is Kevin Burrow, University Avenue, Middleton, in support wishing to speak, representing Kanothi Bruce Architects. Kevin, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. Thank you very much for your time this evening on this project. As you can see on the plan in front of you, the site is located at the end of South Henry Street at the west end of the 100 block of West Wilson. You go to the next slide. The design for this building is a unique shape. Not sure if the rest of the slide can regenerate to show the images. We can stick on this one. As I was saying, the unique of this building is the design of this building is a unique shape such that it is very sensitive to the overall location of the site. This is a very dominant site within the city of Madison. We wanted to maximize the views from the site towards the lake while also being sensitive to the views of the adjacent properties, such that we've rotated the upper story of the building on an angle such that a view corridor is maintained down and past our building towards the lake. So we've got amenities on the second floor rooftop level above parking, and also on the 10th floor above the roof, on the main roof level as well. If you go to the next slide, please. Here's the context again, this unique sort of a backward 7 shape does afford for multiple views while creating outdoor amenities on both sides of the tower element, in addition to the top of the tower itself. Next slide. Here's the overall landscaping plan where you can see we have 2 ingress and egress points for the parking. We have access off of the south end of South Henry Street and also access off of West Wilson as well to access different levels of parking so that there are options for the residents. Next slide. The overall parking levels are similar on all 3 levels, where it's 3 levels of parking from first floor working its way down with access off of South Henry. Next slide. First floor here is, you can see parking coming off of West Wilson. And then the area highlighted in orange is that commercial space, which is frontage right along West Wilson. It's earmarked for a cafe. And then the lobby is directly below that. And we've lined the entire parking area with our bike shop with direct access to the exterior along South Henry Street. So the majority of all the bike parking is accessible directly to the exterior. Next slide. Here's the second floor amenity layouts. So the yellow area is all the common area spaces. which has multiple uses. There's an exercise room, a co-working space with a solarium, and then some lounge and gathering spaces, including a private dining room. Then we also have the outdoor pool amenities shown on the plan. Next slide, please. The upper stories is just a mixture of studios, 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. Next slide. The roof level is fully occupiable with a walking path and green roof areas, and then a dog run is located in the middle. Next slide. And these are the perspective views. So this is a view looking at it from West Wilson down towards South Henry Street. Next slide. The unique design, again, here is where you can see the vista looking all the way up Henry Street and having that outdoor gathering space on the second floor. The unique design of the balconies as well are such that every residence has an access to look at the lake via stepping outward on their balconies. Next slide. Again, the balconies are tipped out even on this other side of the building such that you have great vistas towards the lake. Next slide. And a view looking at it from West Wilson, looking to the west. Next slide. And then the vista from the lake looking back, how you can see it sits in context. Being only 10 stories tall, we're actually shorter than our adjacent neighbors, but this site is limited to 10 stories. With that, I can conclude and be available for answering questions after the public hearing.
Thank you, Kevin. Our next registrant is Jonathan Cooper, South Henry Street, Madison, in support and wishing to speak, representing the Bassett Neighborhood Steering Committee for Capital Neighborhoods Incorporated. Jonathan.
Thank you, Chair Zellers and Commissioners. I am the chair of the steering committee for this particular proposal, and I'm also the chair of the Bassett District for Capital Neighborhoods. The developers came to the neighborhood with this proposal last September and had a number of conversations with neighbors over the ensuing months. I think they were good conversations. It was a good relationship, and I do think the developers did listen to the neighborhood, and so I'm pleased with that. The neighborhood in general does like the design of the tower, like sustainable aspects that the project includes, such as the green roof, solar installation, and electric vehicle parking. And this proposal provides both good amenities for the tenants and as well as the corner cafe, which will be a nice amenity for the neighborhood in general. Some concerns the neighborhood has. The six-way intersection at Henry, Hamilton, and Wilson is already problematic and has been a concern of the neighborhoods for a couple of years, going back to the discussions on the Wilson Street redevelopment, rebuild. The consultant's report that came out estimates there will be 845 additional cars per day for this development, the majority of which would be going in and out of that dead end on Henry Street. Ms. Pruzak referred to the city traffic engineering's memo that suggests improvements, and those improvements would go a long way towards ameliorating some of the issues with that intersection for both traffic and pedestrians. But we would recommend that a full traffic impact analysis, as the staff has requested, be completed before final approval is given to this. The other major area of concern for the neighborhood was the design of the podium and its interaction with the surrounding area, as well as its impact on the pedestrian experience along Henry Street. UDC recommended improved landscaping, and that would go a ways towards helping improve the appearance of the podium. But I also want to call attention to condition 47 in the staff report, which mentions the zoning requirement that ground floor office retail space be installed along Henry Street, fronting the podium. That zoning requirement, if implemented, really would make a great difference in the appearance of that podium. And I'd urge the commissioners to consider that requirement quite seriously.
That concludes your available time, Jonathan. We do have some other registrants. Randy Christensen, High Point Road, Madison, in support, not wishing to speak, but available to answer questions. Will Oshowitz, East Gorham Street, Madison, in support, not wishing to speak, available to answer questions. Bruce Bosman, Commercial Avenue, support, not wishing to speak, available to answer questions. David Diamond, North High Point Road, Madison, not wishing to speak, sorry. So all of those people, all those registrants then would be available to answer questions. Are there questions for either of our speakers or the other registrants? Alder Heck.
Thank you. I'd just like to ask Jonathan Cooper if he could give just the last bit of what he had to say before time ran out, if commissioners are fine with that.
Okay, thank you. Please proceed, Jonathan.
Thank you, Alder Heck. I was going to comment on affordability matters relating to this building. Affordability of downtown rentals is a major concern for capital neighborhoods and some of the other downtown adjacent neighborhoods. We're engaged in some pretty serious discussions on that. The neighborhood steering committee urged the developers of this proposal to pursue affordability for some of the units in this building. I have seen nothing really in the final plans that indicate that there is, in fact, an affordability aspect for this. So thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you, Alder Heck. Alder Lemmer.
Thank you. This question, I think, is for Kevin. And admittedly, this is not something I'm positive that we can consider, but I wanted to have the information in case. Considering this building is next to railroad tracks, what has been incorporated into the building design to insulate the multifamily units from that noise? Because I would imagine that would be very loud.
We will be focusing on the design of the windows along that side of the building. The entire building will be a concrete structure, so it'll be a very sound, stout building. So the mass of itself will help alleviate or absorb any of those noise concerns. But then we will be sensitive to the design of those windows, like I said, with regards to the amount of noise that they can mitigate through the panes of glass as well.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Alder. Are there any further questions of any of our registrants? Alder Heck.
Thank you. This is also for Kevin about the concern about Henry Street and the podium design. Did you give consideration to perhaps having even office space or any features that might help to further break up that facade?
Yes, I appreciate the question here. We have been working together on that, and with regards to comments we received from urban design as well, and then also in coordination with discussions with zoning and planning staff. What we've done in change over the original design is we've taken all the parking away from that facade along Henry Street and introduced the bike shop. So all of the bike parking is now along that side. We have created that access point up to that area for our residents to be able to come in and bring the bike in, such that those windows could be active along that area. It's an inviting space. And then we have increased the amount of windows and fenestration along there. And we'll also be taking into account the comments with regards to revisions requested by UDC for the landscaping design to be more sensitive to the plantings that are along that area to help soften that facade. The depth is not such that we can achieve any sort of office space or anything, because we don't have that need within this building. So what we're trying to do is maximize how that space is utilized by residents, providing a benefit while also screening the vehicles away from that area.
Thank you. And can you just describe briefly, like the bike parking and bike repair station or whatever you referred to. I can't remember exactly what you said, but is that, it looks quite extensive in terms of length. Is it maybe as much as 40% of the length of the building? That it looked like quite a run of bikes, and those are all behind windows. Is that how it helps to break that up?
That area of the facade is probably closer to 50%, and then they are behind windows, but it's a combination of windows and architectural cast stone panels. So it's a combination. Like I said, there's direct access in there for the residents. So it should be a more active space being utilized.
Okay, thank you. That answers my questions.
Thank you, Alder. Commissioner Cantrell.
Just to follow up on Alder Heck's question to the architect, I think it would be appropriate for the architect to show us that elevation again and kind of show us where that bike repair and area is, so that I remember looking at it, but it didn't dawn on me that was where the bike area was.
Sure. Cindy, if you could actually go to the last slide. Or I think it's the second to last slide in our presentation. We did not get to it during my 3 minutes, but.
Sorry, it's freezing up my computer right now, but I'm trying to get there.
So this is a view looking down where you can see the access point to it. And then if you could come up one more image that highlights the element that we've created as far as an access point. It is a set of steps where we're incorporating a track along the steps where people can just roll their bike right up and into that area. So then behind all those windows, heading off to the right of the screen, is that entire bike parking zone.
Okay, so to the right of the screen, that would be the parking zone too, okay.
Yeah, the lobby is to the left.
Okay.
Did you have any other questions, Commissioner Cantrell?
And also the urban design, have they finalized their comments on this project yet?
We have not received the minutes, but it was voted on and approved, unanimously approved. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Commissioner. Alder Heck.
Thanks again. One more question for Kevin Burrow. It may have been indicated, but I didn't notice it. Doesn't seem to be a place for delivery vehicles and pickups and delivery of people and food and such. Did I miss something?
You did not miss anything. We did not speak to that during our presentation. So as far as drop-off area and deliveries go for passenger vehicles, the city is going to have us utilize the north end of the section of South Henry Street for a drop-off zone. And then within the building itself, we actually have designed the first floor level such that we have a large, tall garage entry point off of West Wilson so that all move-ins can take place where they can actually bring the moving vehicle into the garage, park immediately adjacent to the elevator, and people can move in directly within the building. And same could be for package deliveries as well, such that the drop-off is right at the lobby space within the building.
So package delivery then would be right there in the front, but things like Eat Street and Lyft and Uber Eats and such would be on the north part of Henry Street, you're saying, with some dedicated short-term parking?
Yes, it would be considered a loading zone area, so limited 15-minute parking or something along that lines.
And do you know how many spaces the city will be willing to dedicate? Have you talked that through with TE?
We've talked it through in general terms, but we did not land on a specific number of stalls that I can recall.
Okay. I'll ask maybe traffic engineering about that when we get to staff questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Any further questions of any of our registrants? Seeing no raised hands, I will close the public hearing. Questions of staff? Questions of staff? Alder Heck.
Thank you. I'll follow through with my threat and ask Sean Malloy about his impression about short-term parking stalls and the availability of parking along Henry in general. What expense will those limited term parking stalls come?
So I guess I would say that with this development, there were 3 existing driveways and parking restricted in between driveways. So our goal would be to replace the amount of parking on the street, make sure we're not we're decreasing the amount of parking stalls that were open for RP3 spots. So it's a little hard to say, but I would estimate with closing the driveways, we could add at least 2 to 3 stalls because that parking is getting gained by consolidating of the 3 driveways into the one at the end. So with that in mind, our goal is to keep as much parking as there currently is on Henry Street to not disrupt the RP3 situation, but whatever is left, we can allow for short-term loading zone, 15-minute loading, which would be open to anyone. The right-of-way isn't allowed to be reserved for just this development, so it could serve the other buildings nearby. But I guess my estimation would be maybe about 2 or 3 stalls, and that's without really getting there and doing the signing and figuring out what that would be. But that would be the goal.
Thank you, Sean. Did you have any other questions, Alder Heck?
Yeah, just one other quick question. Can you describe the parking situation on around the corner on Wilson? Is there currently parking allowed right there? And will there be in the future along Wilson?
Sean?
Yes, that's a great question. Currently, there is some parking. Farther back from the intersection, there isn't really much adjacent this development. But I guess the future configuration, which is still very much up in the air, enough for debate, hasn't been approved yet. That parking would be removed, or a lot of that would be removed with the proposed cycle track if that were approved. But adjacent this property, there isn't any parking stalls.
Okay, thank you. That answers my questions.
Thank you, Alder. Commissioner Cantrell.
Could Sean show us the kind of the proposed design of the realigned intersection with, is it Henry Street? I think I'd like to see that.
Sean?
Yeah, let's see if am I allowed to share? All right, here we go. All right, so hopefully everyone's able to see my screen.
Yes.
So yeah, here's the exhibit, the concept that we came up with for the development. And really, what this does is makes Henry tee into Hamilton, narrows it up, and adds a crosswalk. As some of you may know, from that area, there's a goat path, that Ziehr line, I guess, that pedestrians have been using. So I think formalizing it is a big benefit here. And some of the concerns that we've heard are that people turn on to Henry thinking they can go to John Nolan, they can access John Nolan, and they get confused. So I think, the idea behind this concept is that it reduces that, I guess, the enticement of people to come down there and look for, access to John Nolan. And it also simplifies the intersection, makes it less confusing by bumping it out and narrowing it. And it also allows, spot to queue for the Wilson intersection. So, we see this as a pretty big improvement. We think that this will help the operations of the intersection and simplify it for everyone.
Thank you, Sean. Any further questions?
No, thank you very much. That's been very helpful.
Alder Heck.
Thank you for indulging my third round of questions. It's only one, though. This is probably for Sydney Prusak or Heather Stouter. I'm assuming this application was made prior to our ordinance change that promotes canopy street trees. And if that's the case, then that wouldn't apply. Is that the case?
Yes, it was made before that ordinance change occurred. Notably, it was made after the bird glass ordinance change occurred. So there is a condition about bird-friendly glass in it. But you're right, it doesn't have a setback requirement consistent with the recently adopted change.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Lemmer.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up with Heather for clarification. When I asked about noise insulation, are we allowed to consider the health, safety, and welfare of future residents in a building, or is it just the greater neighborhood when looking at a conditional use?
Generally, we're limited to the impacts that development would have on its surroundings. There have been a few instances in the past where, with agreement from the development team, the Plan Commission has required or encouraged additional insulation protection from noise, and so that has occurred in the past in just a few instances. It can an exception to that is that adjacent to a state highway, and Sean may have a little bit more information on this. That requirement is much easier to put forward.
Got it. Okay. And does planning and zoning feel comfortable with the level of noise insulation with this development?
I'll turn to Sydney for that. I'm not sure that we've reviewed it extensively.
Sydney?
Yeah, that's not full disclosure, something that we've really talked about with the applicant, and it hasn't come up as far as I know in the neighborhood discussions necessarily.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions, Alder Lemmer?
Not right now, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions of staff? Seeing no raised hands, I'd be looking for a motion. Commissioner Cantrell.
I will recommend that the Plan Commission find that the standards are met and approve the demolition and conditional use requests to construct a 10-story mixed-use building on property zoned urban mixed use located at 145 to 151 West Wilson Street and 309 to 321 South Henry Street. And also recommend that the Plan Commission approve the CSM and forward the necessary resolutions approving the survey and accepting the dedications to the Common Council with a recommendation of approval.
Thank you, Commissioner. Alder Verveer, did you wish to speak now or after we get a second? I unmuted you. Would you?
Thank you very much, Chairperson Zellers. I'm happy to speak now or let you recognize a commissioner for a second.
Okay, I would look for a second then. Is there a second to Commissioner Cantrell's motion? Seconded by Alder Heck. And I will go then to you, Commissioner Cantrell, to speak to your motion, and then immediately to Alder Verveer.
I think this is an excellent addition to the downtown. The building, it's, in my opinion, it's well designed. The architecture, I think, is superior to many of the buildings that we've seen. And I think that I give a lot of credit to the neighborhood association because I know how hard they work, especially in this neighborhood, and working with the developer. And I give a lot of credit to the developer in listening to the neighborhood association because I think that changes were made to make this building better. And but I think it's a great addition. I'm very happy. I walk by this property a lot, so it's nice to see that we're having density exactly where we want it. And this is a good project, and I'm glad to see it being brought forward.
Thank you, Commissioner. Alder Verveer.
Thank you again, Chairperson Zellers, and good evening, Commissioners. I want to at the outset say that I do support the motion proposed by my friend, neighbor, and Vice Chairperson of the Commission, Mr. Cantrell. But let me say a few things, and perhaps some of my testimony might encourage further tweaking of the staff recommended conditions here. So I do very much support the motion before you on both of these agenda items, the conditional use permits and the CSM. Let me say at the top also that I very much wish to associate my remarks with the remarks of my friend and neighbor, Jonathan Cooper. I can't thank him enough for his Yo Person's work, not only shepherding this neighborhood association steering committee, but countless others over the years. And also certainly wish to thank the myriad of other neighbors that were members of this steering committee and met several times to discuss this pending proposal. We had the benefit of having this development team come before us, both myself and the neighborhood association, earlier than most development teams do downtown. So for example, we had our first large publicly noticed neighborhood meeting way back before the holidays in December. So that gives you a sense as to how much time that the development team gave us to work cooperatively with them. I absolutely share the remarks from Jonathan and Vice Chairperson Cantrell as to the high quality design and overall architecture of this application, of this proposal. I want to compliment Kevin and the other members of the design team for that. I also very much would agree that there is a lot to like about this proposal. That's why I'm supporting the motion and urge you to do the same. The increased density is obviously needed in our community, and it can be supported vertically in this location downtown. Obviously, the downtown plan has long called for that sort of density at this location. Additionally, the investment downtown is very helpful. I will disclose that the city hopes to include a tax incremental finance district to include this proposal so that we can make further improvements to the neighborhood, including, I hope, further improvements to that very confusing intersection where this proposal sits at the corners of South Hamilton, South Henry, and West Wilson Streets. So there is a lot to like about it, but as is often the case, of course, let me spend perhaps more of the time talking about some of the concerns that are still issues that I think deserve to be acknowledged, and perhaps maybe a condition or two might be massaged a bit further. First of all, I think we need to recognize as Jonathan articulated at the end of his comments, and thank you, Commissioner Heck, for giving Jonathan a little more time to finish his statement. But as is always the case, and quite appropriately so, without fail, but moreover, my constituents ask developers downtown if they would please include affordable housing in their proposals. In this case, that was obviously true. And the development team did at least, and I hate to use the word perfunctory because that's an insult that is probably not deserving at all, but I know that they at least had some initial conversations or two with planning department director Wachter and perhaps other city staff about the potential tools that might be available to them to provide some less than market rate housing at this site. Obviously, they chose not to pursue that in the final analysis, and we can't really do much about that, of course, given the state of where we live in Wisconsin and the statutes and case law that we have to live with. But I do want to recognize and mourn the loss of significantly below market rate apartments that will be lost in at least a few of the buildings that would be demolished to make way for this proposal. Additionally, and Chairperson Zellers, of course, you know this even better than I, it is a bit surprising to myself, and I'm sure to you, that there were really hardly any historic preservation concerns articulated about the proposed demolition of 151 West Wilson Street. As you read in the staff report drafted by Sydney, this property was nominated for local landmark status not that long ago, obviously several years ago, but not that long ago by the Madison Trust for Historic Preservation. So I had certainly anticipated that the concern about the demo of 151 West Wilson would be raised early and often in the neighborhood review process by other stakeholders, perhaps in the city, including the trust, that the Landmarks Commission would really take a hard look at it, which I know they did. But perhaps if I was a betting person, I would have predicted a different outcome in terms of the Landmarks Commission's advice to all of you as it relates to 151 West Wilson. Obviously, that was not the case. That was all been covered in Sydney's report. But I think it is important to acknowledge the loss of 151 West Wilson from a historic preservation point of view. I know that the development team would be willing to certainly allow for that structure, any other structures proposed for demolition, to be moved by any interested parties, hopefully compensated as well for some of the costs of moving it. The historic columns that for most of its history were adorning the 151 home are still available and in storage, according to Bruce Bosman, one of the applicants who's with you tonight. So those columns are available to be reattached to 151 West Wilson in case anyone's listening or knows of anyone that might be interested in acquiring that beautiful home. Let me also acknowledge the loss of, and I appreciate Alderperson Heck asking about the relevance of the recent and important street tree ordinance in our zoning code, amendment to our zoning code. I do also think it's important to recognize and mourn the loss of a couple of street trees that will have to be removed to make way for the driveway access, ingress and egress proposed in this application as well. That would segue then to perhaps where we might consider a more robust condition relating to the landscaping. I would say that as Jonathan shared with all of you, the outstanding concerns that we have in the Bassett neighborhood are largely related to the podium and how it is proposed before you tonight and the outstanding traffic issues. So I'll close on the traffic issues and just mention the landscaping a little further. In a recent conversation with Principal Planner Kevin Furco, I was led to believe that the Planning Division staff would propose a stronger, more robust condition in the staff report relating to increased landscaping around the perimeter of the podium, particularly South Henry Street and John Nolan Drive, the state-owned railroad right-of-way. And by the way, thank you, Alderperson Lemmer, for your questions about train noise. As someone who lives right adjacent to the train tracks in the neighborhood here, I assure you it is an issue. And coincidentally, this exact same development team recently proposed, had approved, and built an apartment building, a multifamily building on the railroad tracks, even closer to the tracks in the 600 block of West Wilson Street. So they do have some experience in these matters. I will just say as a digression here about the train noise that we have been the beneficiary for quite a long time in the neighborhood of having a federally approved train horn ban in the neighborhood. So the train horns are not the issue. It's the hearing the engine and the train cars go by that's more the issue. But anyway, so thank you for that, Lindsay. But back to the podium issue. While I certainly appreciate the zoning staff conditions, and it's unclear to me as we sit here as to whether or not the zoning staff believes that those conditions are met with this proposal, their shaded proposed conditions as we sit here tonight. I do hope that we can amplify, and even if it's just the design team, the development team, hearing me say this, that we can go even better than what UDC added as a condition to their recommendation to all of you to have more robust landscaping. I know we are all very familiar with driving or biking along John Nolan Drive, walking along John Nolan Drive on the Capitol City Trail through Law Park, and seeing the very stark hardscape buildings that are there along the railroad corridor with very little landscaping in many cases. This is an example where we can do better and really obstruct the podium with lush, robust landscaping, hopefully even in the autumn. So I would hope and urge that the development team does go well beyond the landscape plan that they submitted with this application, and be the good neighbors that I hope they will be and certainly intend to be, and tremendously increase the landscaping along South Henry Street and the John Nolan Drive and Railroad right-of-way elevations of this proposal. Lastly, as it relates to the traffic issues, I do want to thank the traffic engineering staff, especially Sean Malloy and Yang Tao. I also want to recognize that Mark Winters with us tonight in the meeting for seriously studying the traffic issues that we in the neighborhood brought to their attention, that we need to continue working, as Jonathan articulated, to problem solve this long problematic intersection. It will only get more difficult when the city installs a two-way cycle track for bicyclists over the next couple of years in both this 100 block of West Wilson and other blocks of West Wilson Street. So I do want to recognize, and I think it was just more of a typo that the conditions weren't shaded, but want to recognize certainly that conditions 40 relating to delivery, commercial delivery plan, item 42, a TDMP requirement, and 43, the developer's agreement to pay for the public works improvements that would be done in the public right-of-way on South Henry Street and the South Hamilton Street intersection there south of Wilson are very important and really hinge on my overall support for the motion that's before you tonight. So thanks again, TE staff, for working on this. Obviously the memo has been highlighted for all of you. That's in the Legistar item in your packets as it relates to traffic. But I will say that long term, we need to do more, especially for the tons of bicyclists and pedestrians that utilize this intersection on a daily basis. So with all that, thank you very much, Chairperson Zellers. If there are any questions, I'm obviously happy to address any of them. Thank you.
Alder, did you have any specific language that you were hoping might be added as a condition?
I do not. Again, I was led to believe, and I don't mean to assign blame here or sound critical, because that certainly is not my take, and I never want to seem critical of staff ever, all the years I've been in this position. But I, again, maybe it was my misunderstanding, but I thought that Kevin Furco had articulated to me last week that there would be a shaded plan division staff proposed comment related to landscaping along the podium on South Henry and John Nolan that went above and beyond the UDC language, which Sydney shared with all of you in her report. Perhaps we could simply ask Sydney and Heather if at this time, if they wouldn't mind explaining that if they feel that the UDC language as shared in the staff report is sufficient, and explain to anyone listening here how that would be interpreted by staff as part of the staff sign off, and who exactly on the staff would ensure that it is a robust landscape plan above and beyond, again, what's in this application.
Thank you, Alder. I see that Heather has her hand raised. Heather?
Sure. And I just spoke with Kevin. I think he has joined the meeting, and he may be able to speak a little more to it. But it was staff's understanding that the UDC recommendation was the recommendation that we'd be moving forward with. But I can assure you that as staff, we, meaning Janine, Kevin, Sydney, not Sydney, because she'll no longer be with the planning division. We'll look very closely at what they come up with for a more robust landscape plan to meet that UDC condition. Sincere apologies if it sounds like maybe there was just a misunderstanding about a more robust planning division recommended condition, which we could certainly come up with together here if needed. But I'll turn to Kevin is here too.
Kevin?
Good evening. I'm looking up the question. I'm just joining the discussion right now. So yeah, I don't think I have anything to add, and I apologize for any miscommunication. It was I was referencing the UDC comment, but the Plan Commission could certainly provide additional comments or specificity related to landscaping. And we can work with the commission to develop additional language. I'm pulling up the comments from UDC right now. So if there's interest in the Plan Commission to refine that condition, we can certainly work with you and get you language here as this goes forward.
Commissioner Cantrell.
Well, I can try to come up with a condition here. And staff can massage it too, and the alder as well. The developer worked with staff to substantially increase the landscaping along the South Henry and Railroad right-of-way areas along the podium of the site. Something like that, but I agree with the alder that some of the buildings along John Nolan Drive that front on the John Nolan don't have any landscaping, and they look pretty shabby in most cases. And I think putting some substantial landscape along that frontage as well, which most buildings just neglect, I think would be important, as well as the South Henry street elevation.
Was that a amendment to your motion to add that,
yes.
Commissioner? Okay. Is there a second to that amendment? Seconded by Alder Lemmer. Ms. Prusak, did you have something that you wish to add?
Yeah, just a clarifying question for Commissioner Cantrell as I type this up. You mentioned in the right-of-way, I think, is this supposed to be...
It's adjoining the right-of-way, the railroad right-of-way.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to make sure.
Yep.
Thank you, Sydney. Okay, we have a motion to add that amendment. Let's take Alder Verveer. Did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, yes, thank you, Chair Zellers. Just very, very quickly, I really appreciate this friendly amendment, if you will, to the motion before you. And I am embarrassed that you had to rejoin the meeting, Kevin, because of perhaps my miscommunication in understanding you in our conversation late last week. So I really appreciate, again, the staff just hearing me out and appreciating my concern here. And so thank you, Kevin, for joining us. And thank you all collectively, especially Vice Chair Cantrell for your amendment to your motion. I appreciate it. And
thank you.
Further, just want the development team to hear that I know that they mean to do right by us. And I'm sorry if this comes across otherwise, but I wanted to amplify the UDC condition in the highest possible way. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Alder. I'm going to assume unanimous consent of that amendment unless I see a raised hand to object to that amendment being added to the motion. I do not see a raised hand to object. Is there any further discussion on the motion as amended? Seeing no raised hands, we'll come to a vote. I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. The next item on and thank you for joining us, Alder Verveer. The next item on our agenda is agenda item 8, Legistar 64750, located at 12 North Few Street, 2nd Alder District, Urban Design District 8, consideration of a demolition permit to allow a portion of a street-facing facade to be demolished and for a 2-story addition containing 8 commercial spaces and 8 apartments to be constructed. And we will hear from Chris Wells for the staff report. Chris.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Planning Commission. So I'm just get my notes. Okay, thank you. The applicant is seeking approval to demolish portions of the existing building, mainly on its northeastern and southeastern sides. This involves raising the entire northeasterly facade of the roughly 540 square foot office annex located off of the eastern side of the building. Therefore, a technical demolition permit requirement has been triggered. And just to clarify, if there are any questions about what a technical demolition is, it's kind of an informal term that staff use when the entire building isn't coming down, but rather if one street-facing facade is removed, automatically that triggers a demolition permit requirement, same as if the entire building was proposed for demolition. The proposal as submitted does not require any conditional use approvals. Other than requiring a demolition permit, I think it's important to remember that this is otherwise a permitted use at this time. But as the commercial tenant spaces lease up, conditional use approvals may be required at that time. And as such, the conditional use standards are not currently applicable at this time. Regarding parking, no parking is provided on site. But that is consistent with the zoning code, as there are no parking minimum requirements in the CCT district. I would note that the off-site parking located in the vicinity of the subject parcel is quite limited. There was a map showing the various restrictions included in the staff report, and I'm happy to answer more questions about the parking after the public hearing. Also noting the UDC did review this proposal back on May 12th. They recommended initial approval. Generally, they liked the architecture, but they had a number of concerns related to the functionality of the building. This included both the lack of off-street parking, the viability of having the residential parking stalls directly in front of the commercial of 4 of the commercial tenant spaces, thus blocking the commercial spaces themselves. and a few other concerns. I would just note that subsequent to that meeting, the applicant did revise their site plan. It was actually in regards to them satisfying the usable open space requirements of the zoning code, but they have submitted an updated site plan with no parking in front of the 4 western commercial stalls. That site plan has been included in the submitted materials. And I would just lastly note in regards to the UDC that they will be required to return to the UDC for final approval before final sign off. And also the applicant has submitted a text amendment related to the Urban Design District 8 zoning text to amend the building setback along Curtis Court from a minimum of 15 feet to a range of 5 to 20 feet, which would allow for their proposed design. The Urban Design Commission did recommend approval to the commission, and the Common Council,
Here's the results from the web.
And the Common Council will be reviewing that at a future meeting. The Planning Division believes that the Planning Commission can find the standards met for demolition with this request to raise the existing street-facing wall of the office annex. Staff believe that the proposed reuse of the existing structure and 2-story addition at this location is consistent with the recommendations in the adopted plans, which all recommend community mixed-use development up to 3 stories. I'm happy to answer questions after the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. I will open the public hearing. We do have some registrants. We will hear first from John Seaman, South Oakland Road, Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin, in support wishing to speak, representing Jeremy Knutson. John Seaman, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thanks to all of you for your time. Yes, if you wouldn't mind, Chris, going to the 3rd slide. Thank you very much. So, yes, this proposal is really intended to bring more visibility and more presence to the street front, particularly at that southern corner of Northview and Curtis Court. The project in and of itself is really, we feel, going in line with the overall intent of the code, the zoning code relative to use and density. It's approximately a 5,558 square foot building footprint at 2 stories, totaling 11,095 square feet. The second story are 8. In the second story are 8 residential units, and in the first story are 8 commercial units. Chris, if you would go to the next slide. Looks like it might take a second to regenerate. Each of the second story units and each of the first story commercial spaces are approximately 650 square feet. And the intention for all of this is really to bring small commercial spaces sufficient for small businesses. At the end of the day, each of these commercial spaces at 650 square feet, when you reduce the space associated with stairs and restrooms, these are very much small businesses, local small businesses, and that goes to the intent and the size of the 1-bedroom units above them. We think also goes to the intent of bringing smaller, more affordable units online in the city of Madison. We've worked for quite some time with the Alder and the neighborhood, which has been a really great experience and beneficial across the board. We found out that parking was very important. We initially had 4 off-street parking stalls, and we also tried to keep 3 trees, 2 of which are in the right-of-way and 1 of which is on the property at the corner of Curtis Court and North Few. Our open space requirement has now put us into a position where we won't have the off-street parking stalls. That said, I'm available for any questions, obviously, and we're looking for this demolition to really kind of put a new redevelopment more in line with the neighborhood and zone.
Thank you, John. That concludes your available time. The next registrant is Karen Banaszak, Curtis Court, Madison, neither support nor opposed, wishing to speak. Welcome, Karen. It's good to see your name.
Oh, hi, this is Jeff Liddell.
Oh, okay. Jeff Reinke will be speaking, so we will have to correct the registration then. Go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you, Liddell. Karen couldn't be here tonight.
Okay.
So we like the project. We have a few concerns. One is saving the trees and the shrub at the corner of Curtis and Few. The second is we like to have as much permeable pavers as possible. We just had flooding just a few years ago around here, and permeable pavers would help that. The site gets a lot of direct sunlight throughout the day. That flat roof would be ideal for solar paneling, and full spectrum solar is only a block away from the project. And lastly, the parking. We've had so much development on East Washington the last few years with the factory apartments across the street, and then the Lyric and the Arden and Galaxy and Constellation. That street parking is at a premium. It's so hard to find street parking around here. And the fact that this project has no parking is a concern to us very much. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. The next registrant is John Belknap, Curtis Court, Madison, neither support nor opposed, wishing to speak. Another familiar name. Welcome, John. You have 3 minutes. Has John been unmuted from our end?
No, it's a problem of
there we go.
Zoom. All right. I have 3 segments of comments: structure, concept, and implementation. In general, I would approve of the project of the demolition. For structure, looking at the old building that will be retained, I have never in any meeting seen an engineering study which confirms that a cement block, 1-story curtain wall building will support a 2nd floor and a roof. And the back of this building, behind the column that you can see, is part of the demolition. So we don't have any word on that. The demolition will also destroy or impact the forecourt. People need to know that the forecourt is built on fill from Burgess Battery and a foundry across probably Gishel factory, which means it's toxic soil. So if there's any impact on the current cement paving in that area, there needs to be a toxicity test. For concept, it's a little disingenuous that the project is always presented as work live. It took the UDC the entire meeting for them to discover at the end that there is no legal connection between the apartments above and the workspace below. And that's one of the problems. I would like to see it connected. Rent the apartment and rent the shop, but that's not to be. As far as the the customers and the tenants, they are expected to walk, bike, or bus to get to the shops and the apartments. That means that they have to use the city bus system. The nearest bus stop is 2 blocks away, either at Bedford or at Ingersoll. The BRT will probably not stop there. For walking in, there is very little residential need for these shops. We don't even know what shops there will be because that hasn't been defined. And as far as the bus or the biking, if they come down the bike boulevard and they arrive at Few and Curtis, there's no bike parking. No bike parking for the tenants and none for customers of the shops. And I was especially hurt that this is the remains of scooter therapy and there's no scooter parking provided anywhere. So to summarize,
John, I'm afraid that's the concludes your available time.
Yeah.
Are there any questions for any of the registrants? Alder Heck.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask that since John was struggling at the beginning, if he could complete his remarks that he had at the end.
Very good. John, could you please complete your remarks? Thank you, Alder. John Belknap.
all right, can you hear me?
Yes.
There's no no indication of what happens with the trash. People are, to access their apartments, are going to have to go around trash bins. And how does Pelletieri or Waste Management get those bins out past the tree and the landscaping in order to empty them? There's no indication of what happens in the winter. And I guess I would just like to end by making some alert predictions that if the city or the contractor wishes to close Curtis at Few, it's going to be a real ugly scene. If there are construction cranes that have to stay in Curtis Court, or we have a line of cement trucks staging their delivery like they did for the art project on Ingersoll, again, we're going to have an awful lot of problems. And lastly, once it's occupied, hopefully, by shops and apartments, if the people insist on parking on either Few Street or Curtis Court, I can't call parking enforcement because they have told me that in the East Wash, Ingersoll, Mifflin area, they don't enforce parking restrictions. There are too many violations. So that's it.
Thank you, John. Did you have any follow-up questions, Alder Heck?
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions of any of the registrants? Seeing no raised hands, I will close the public hearing. Are there questions of staff? Alder Heck.
Thank you. This is either for Chris Wells or maybe Heather Stouter. There's a lot of discussion and appropriate concerns about this proposal related to parking, related to other aspects of the proposal. Yet we're considering a demolition permit request. And I read in the demolition standards that there are places where we can consider the public welfare. We certainly can consider city and neighborhood plans, but from the staff report and from what I understand, it really isn't so much, there isn't much of an issue related to plans of various sorts. I could see where there could be some discussion of these matters that have come up related to demolition standards. And I think in the past, in other plan commission considerations, that has come up. But in particular, my question is related to putting conditions on a demolition permit request. If we approve it, is it appropriate to add some conditions? For instance, I don't know if this is an appropriate one, but let's say we do want some parking, or even though that's not really under our purview in this situation because parking isn't required, couldn't Plan Commission add a couple of conditions of approval for the permit?
Oh, I'll start on that one. It would not be advisable. From the staff perspective. The Plan Commission, as you mentioned, Alder Heck, is purely looking at the demolition, in this case, a partial demolition of the building for what will be a permitted use consistent with plans, in a future BRT corridor, well served by bike and transit infrastructure. So I think it would be really tough to, especially in just a demolition review, to make the case to require parking when it's not required in the zoning district. This is a very small project. So I think we would definitely not advise that, and think that the Plan Commission should stick to the demolition standards really clearly if there are any that the Plan Commission doesn't feel are met. But I think the staff report says it best, that it's consistent with plans, not a conditional use. It will be, as you know, it's under review by the Urban Design Commission for design, but not the land use aspects of it, like parking is considered to be.
I guess I just want to clarify, though, what in the standards of approval for demolitions, the references to in the statement of purpose to protecting neighborhood character, or the usual statements about normal and orderly development, and approving this demolition permit effectively could impact those by making parking terrible in the neighborhood. And so I could see where perhaps there's some wiggle room there. You might disagree, though, and I understand. I'll just leave it at that, and I just kind of wanted to hear your perspective. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that the Plan Commission could make a case if you feel strongly enough that the lack of parking doesn't adequately meet that condition. Certainly state that. It's not something that staff would advise, and I think it would be pretty tough to make that case here with such a small project in a zoning district where parking isn't required regardless of the scale of the proposal.
Thank you. That's my question for now.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Cantrell.
Well, I have similar concerns as Alder Heck. And also, I don't see any provisions for bicycles. Having Mike Rui, I've been kind of influenced by his comments on, bikes, and some of the comments said, well, people will be biking there. Well, where are they going to put their bikes? Along, wrapped around trees, or, No,
that's covered in condition 38 by zoning. They will need to provide adequate bicycle parking. And the zoning standards. And also, the dumpsters, we're having 8 apartments and 8 businesses, and it's on the west side of the building. It looks like they have maybe 6, those dumpsters that are residential dumpsters. That's
totally inadequate, in my opinion. I don't know if there's some measurement that the city has on trash, but that has to be accommodated on this site too. So I understand what urban design was getting at, that, where's the open space? But, in my opinion, having that area in parking is probably much better than having it, pervious pavers, as some of the correspondence we received is probably better than the having no parking. And I know that space is only like 17 feet, and that's probably not deep enough for a legal parking space, but that's where people are going to park. And it's probably going to be done over time when, the city is not really looking at few streets. There are this area, but it looks like they're doing a lot on this site. And the other question that one of the speakers raised was the construction of the second story on this cinder block building. I'm assuming that's going to be reviewed by the building staff and those sorts of. And I know that we don't get into that, but if I were city staff, the building department, I would be concerned about that. So, but anyway, if you want to comment on any of those rambling comments I've made, that's great.
I would just comment that the conversation that building staff Jacob Moskowitz and I had with the applicant John Seaman late last week, there are other options. There's no required setback on any of the frontages in terms of the building setback. And so currently along the southeastern side, because it's only 6 feet as shown, the minimum dimension for usable open space in the code is 8 feet. So if the applicant did demolish 2 feet more of the building and had an 8-foot corridor, they could include that entire strip of area as part of usable open space. I would just then question whether that's more valuable for the tenants versus in the front. But I would defer to the architect to speak to their decision making as to why they felt that was better and the trash accommodations.
Well, my concern and my guess is the neighborhood's concern is it's not the open space. I mean, there's parks in the area, there's a school nearby, but my concern is more parking, because especially in that site, because that street is like an alley. There's no opportunity for parking there. And in driving in the neighborhood just, this weekend, people park on the streets. It's really, that's could be an issue. And if they don't enforce it, that's even going to be more of an issue. So anyway, I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Solheim.
Thank you. I was just wondering for staff, to be honest, I'm not as concerned about the parking, but I understand others' concerns. But is there a way to get an exception on the open space requirements in exchange? Can you get some sort of conditional use or waiver or something like that could be accommodating to the parking?
So right now they would need to get a variance for that. And I don't believe they've tried to, I don't even know if that conversation has happened with zoning regarding pursuit of a variance. I also should mention that the zoning code, if it does end up changing soon related to density conditional use thresholds and open space, then the open space requirement would be 1/4 what it is today. roughly, I think maybe even a little less than that. And so, if this had been submitted later, the open space requirement would have been much less. But I think at this point, what they would need to pursue would be a zoning variance, and I'm not sure they would have a strong case to make there.
And that would be through the Zoning Board of Appeals?
Correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
And really, the usable open space requirement is very small. They can accommodate up to 75% of it on balconies and rooftops. And as Chris mentioned, there would be a way that they could make slight adjustments and accommodate sufficient at-grade space.
Okay. Thank you. That answers my question.
Thank you. Are there further questions of staff? Alder Heck.
Thank you. This is for either Heather or Chris. I think it was Wednesday or Thursday of last week, the proposal changed, and the parking spaces that were in the version that the neighborhood is considered, that the neighborhood association considered, changed, and that is now apparently slated for all permeable pavers in a patio area. And my concern is, what might go on in that patio area there. It's a very small neighborhood, and we haven't had the opportunity to discuss all of that. I anticipate that discussion will happen at Urban Design Commission. Having been at the previous UDC meeting, they were considering some of these items that were kind of a strange mixture of Plan Commission and UDC considerations. It was kind of unavoidable, and I consider this to be one of those areas. It's something we would maybe talk about normally. Do you think that Urban Design Commission can talk about programming of an exterior space like that? Is that within their purview?
I think it would be. I mean, the architect did, and I would refer to him again, speak to the different possible, it greatly depends on the uses that go into that space. And I do have a table that I could put up on the screen that would give us an idea of what the permitted versus the conditional uses would be for that site. But he was talking about like a shop front kind of, spilling out in a controlled, manner, but could items be brought out and actually I would defer to the applicant, but it being more, I don't believe like any outdoor seating was mentioned per se. I mean, restaurants would not be able to go in there, certainly with, given that the exceptions in the CCT district, because the avenue is just down the way in the coffee shop, that any restaurant would be required to provide parking, and the site can't handle it. So I guess an outdoor seating area for a restaurant would not exist, but he was mentioning more of the uses kind of opening up onto the sidewalk. And so I would defer to the applicant for specifics as to what types of tenants they envisioned and how that would work. So
Thanks, Chris. And I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I know the applicant doesn't have tenants yet. They're envisioning many different things, and there are some restrictions. These really are small spaces. But if commercial tenants want to start using that newly created patio space for outdoor activities, then it's going to get into zoning matters related to what they can and can't do out there in terms of selling, maybe streetery, maybe, I don't know. It could be, it's zoning then that determines what's allowed out there. I assume just like any other business, if somebody wants to plop some chairs down in front of their business and they're not blocking the sidewalk, that they can do that. I guess it depends on their lease also, though, as to what they can do. So I'm just feeling like the patio is a little bit half-baked. But that answers my question for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Alder Heck. Are there further questions of staff? Further questions of staff? Seeing none, I would be looking for a motion. Alder Heck.
Thank you. I'm going to move that this item be referred to a future plan commission meeting, and I'll leave it at that for now.
Is there a second? Seconded by Alder Lemmer. Alder Heck, did you wish to speak to your motion?
Please, thank you. I think this project is a good project. It just needs a little bit more refining, and I really was on the edge of supporting it with the 4 parking spaces. But then after hearing Urban Design Commission ask many good questions about circulation and how are people going to find the residences, who's going in what door, and it's a little bit confusing. I felt those things did need to be addressed, and I'm not sure that the patio addresses those, but we're not Urban Design Commission. So I feel like it may even be appropriate for us to consider this aspect after UDC, but I would defer to staff on whether or not that was appropriate. It may not be.
So it looks like Ms. Stouter is saying refer until after the Urban Design Commission.
I think the Plan Commission could do that, a referral to come back once a final call has been made by Urban Design Commission. And that would give the Plan Commission perhaps more answers to the questions asked this evening.
Okay, I will consider that to be part of your motion, Alder Heck, and with no objection from any of the other commissioners. Okay, very good. Did you have any further comments on your motion, Alder Heck?
I would just reiterate that I do think this redevelopment has a lot of potential, and that I think it can go forward. So I'm just reiterating that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Alder. Commissioner Cantrell.
I would concur with Alder Heck. There's many things about this development that I like, and I think that it's just not quite there yet. And I think that maybe urban design can tweak some of the issues and address some of those issues, but just more specifics on bike parking and those sorts of things. Where are those things on a site? And I know it's a condition of approval, but put it on the site plan because it's really a tight site. And are they going to take up the open space area that they show? So those are the things I'd like a little bit more specifics because it is a tight site. But there's a lot of things I like about it. And I think it will be approved eventually, but I think that delaying it is a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Solheim.
I support the referral. I agree that there are some logistical items about the way that the building functions that need to be figured out or just better communicated to the commission and to UDC. However, I just wanted to reiterate that, this isn't an area that is well served by walkability, by buses, by biking. And, we talk a lot about not wanting to have everything, with a ton of parking. And we talk a lot about wanting sustainable infill and missing middle housing. And I think this fits all of those goals. So I just don't want to detract, but, a lot from the project by talking about parking. And clearly this is a very unique port. So it's on top of everyone's mind. But I do think that this checks a lot of the boxes of what we want to see. So I appreciate the applicant bringing this forward.
Thank you, Commissioner. Seeing no more raised hands, we will come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And next on our agenda is business by members. Any business by members? Seeing no raised hands, we will go to the Secretary's report. Heather.
Thank you, Chair Zellers. First, and not listed on your agenda, I did want to report back on the council actions of last week. As many of you know, the council did vote to overturn the Plan Commission decision on the 619 to 621 North Lake Street demolitions and new multifamily building. And so that project will be moving forward. And we expect to be working with that applicant team shortly on final designs. All of the conditions of approval that the Plan Commission, that were in the staff report to Plan Commission, are valid and were adopted by the council. And then there was another condition that we try to work with the applicant to integrate the existing facades as much as practical within the new building. And then, let's see. Chair Zellers, I don't know if you want to take a question now before moving on to upcoming meetings or.
Oh, yes, Commissioner Cantrell.
I guess, could you elaborate? That was such a terrible building. In my opinion, it's only one commission member here, but can you elaborate? What were they thinking? I mean, it had to be a majority vote too, right? I mean, they just can't have a simple majority. It needed 14 members, and the vote ended up being 16-3. So it was a fairly strong decision to overturn the Plan Commission decision. And I think a very strong case was made from alums and existing residents within the fraternity that you may recall from last November at the Plan Commission meeting here. And I think that ultimately the council had to weigh that and ended up making a determination that the demolition and conditional use standards could be met and approved that appeal. I wish they would have kicked it back to urban design or something so that maybe the building would have been a little bit more attractive than what was proposed. So anyway, sorry.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, looking ahead, looking forward to our June 7th meeting. One item not listed, we'll have a short informational discussion about the Odana area plan and proactive rezoning in that area. It seems to be a hot topic. I know we've discussed the Oscar Mayer area with you, and we want to try to continue to get Plan Commission feedback on how best to utilize that tool of proactive rezoning and also official mapping. And then with regard to the development projects on that agenda, I think I'll just mention the first three here. 216 South Hamilton Street, demolition of a single family home for a 4-unit live-work building. And then out on Town Center Drive, an amended plan development for construction of 74 units in 3 different buildings. And then far west on Pioneer Road, rezoning and plat for 39 new single family lots. And then on June 21st, there's really just a collection of smaller scale proposals. I don't think I'll need to mention any of them this evening, but yeah, looking forward to both of those meetings. And again, June 21st, we'll also have the referral of the Portage Road item that was on tonight's agenda that should be heard on June 21st. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Heather. Announcements? Any announcements? Okay, we will move to adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn? Moved by Commissioner Cantrell and seconded by Alder Boris. Thank you all very much. Have a good week.